By 1890, racism and Jim Crow laws promoted segregation between African Americans and whites. Baseball team owners made a gentleman's agreement not to hire any African Americans, causing many of the black players to form their own teams. As times have changed, it's sometimes asked why African American has not been substituted for the term Negro, but when you visit the Negro League Baseball Museum in Kansas City, Missouri, you see that it states, quote, "To change from Negro to African American would negate the inequalities that were taking place at the time, a time of intense racism, segregation, and discrimination." During this era, the term wasn't considered derogatory. It was even used in the official business names for some of the teams and leagues, and the term is now archaic and not appropriate when referring to African Americans. However, the Negro League Baseball Museum has chosen to preserve that piece of history within its name. In 1920, Andrew Rube Foster created an organized league structure as a result of the segregation that was taking place within professional baseball. He was a former player, he was a team manager, and he was an owner for the Chicago American Giants. And so he formed the first Negro League in 1920 at the Paseo YMCA in Kansas City, Missouri. He and a few other Midwestern team owners joined to form the Negro National League. As a result of this formation, several other rival leagues began to pop up. Baseball was brought to the African American community all across America, in urban centers, in the rural countrysides, in the United States, in Canada, and even Latin America. These leagues during their heyday maintained a high level of professional skill. Several players were good enough or better than the Major League Baseball players of the time, or their white counterparts. They were mainstays and important pieces of the African American communities during this time. It helped with economic development and pride within black communities. This event, this formation of the Negro National League, was a key moment in baseball. It was a key moment in civil rights history. In 1945, Major League Baseball's Brooklyn Dodgers recruited Jackie Robinson to become the first African American to play in Major League Baseball, and so Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier. But before he played for the Dodgers, he was a player for the Kansas City Monarchs, a famous competitive championship team within the Negro Leagues, and so he became the first African American in the modern era to play Major League Baseball. But before he broke the color barrier, he was a player within the Negro Leagues. Once he broke the color barrier, it was a great moment for baseball. It was a great moment for civil rights, but it did also foster the decline of the Negro Leagues. Other great African American stars of the Negro Leagues began to cross over into Major League Baseball as well. When the greatest black players moved over to Major League Baseball, so did the eyes of the fans who were supporting Negro League teams during this time, and so the black community's attention moved from Negro League Baseball to Major League Baseball. But their legacy lives on through surviving players and through the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, which is what I am focusing this lecture on today. The NLBM is a not-for-profit organization established in 1990, located in the heart of Kansas City's historic 18th and Vine Jazz District, which was a hotspot during the Civil Rights era, the 1950s, and even during the 1920s and 30s, at the heart of and the height of Negro League Baseball. It operates only 2 blocks away from the Paseo YMCA, where Andrew Rube Foster established the Negro National League in 1920, and it opened as a one-room office space in 1991, but in 1997 it moved into its current location, which is a 10,000 square feet home inside the 18th and Vine District. The chairman at the time was John Buck O'Neill, who was also a former baseball star and star of the Negro Leagues as well. And since its move in 1997, the Negro League Baseball Museum has welcomed more than 2 million visitors and become an important cultural institution, not only in Kansas City, but across the country and across the world. In 2006, it gained national designation from the United States Congress. The museum itself takes you on a chronological journey through the Negro Leagues era. You enter the museum through a turnstile, like in a baseball stadium, where you give your ticket and you watch a video. Then in the next section, which is a grandstand set up like bleachers, that gives you a brief history of African American baseball and then the rise of the Negro Leagues. From that grandstand area, you walk around the baseball diamond looking at various exhibits, stemming from pre-Negro Leagues baseball exhibits to early Negro League exhibits, to exhibits about the Negro Leagues during their heyday, also theoretical exhibits that deal with stereotypes and racism during the day, African American baseball players, community leadership during this time, also sections on barrier breaking and integration, and also the museum ends and filters out into a baseball diamond with bases, infield dirt, those types of things, and each position is manned by a statue of famous Negro League ball players. Within these exhibits include a timeline of dates and facts about key African Americans, African American history, African American ball players in the Negro Leagues, with photos and other digital and audio formats that really bring the exhibits to life and place Negro League baseball within the context of American history and African American history. There are exhibits that include actual jersey from the Negro Leagues, various teams, various superstar players. There are hundreds and hundreds of photos, newspaper clips, text panels, those types of things that preserve the history. The museum offers different traveling exhibits as well, and so they offer 5 different national traveling exhibitions to give perspective on the importance and the magnitude of the professional Negro baseball leagues and their impact on social advancement, their impact on society. These exhibits in the museum and the traveling exhibits are interactive. They are multimedia based, designed for students of any kind, lovers of baseball, or anyone interested in history during the 20th century America. One of the traveling exhibits is called Negro Leagues Baseball, which is an exhibit that honors and explores the connections of African American baseball with the history of Hispanic cultures, communities, and countries. There's another traveling exhibit called Shades of Greatness, which is centered around artwork of the Negro Leagues era. It features 35 original works of art produced by 28 different professional artists, and what these paintings deal with are the interpretation of the Negro Leagues experience both on and off the playing field. I mentioned a bit earlier that John Buck O'Neill was an original president and founder of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. There is a traveling exhibit that deals with his life entitled Buck O'Neill, Right on Time. It chronicles his life, his journey through the Negro Leagues, and it centers around his biography. Another traveling exhibit that exists and stems from the Negro League Baseball Museum is entitled They Were All-Stars. In 2012, the Kansas City Royals organization hosted the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, and so this exhibit tells the story of the Negro League players who became Major League Baseball All-Stars. So this traveling exhibit highlights people like Hank Aaron, who played for the Indianapolis Clowns, Willie Mays, who played for the Birmingham Black Barons, Ernie Banks, who played for the Kansas City Monarchs, Monty Irvin for the Newark Eagles, Don Newcomb also for those Eagles, Minnie Minoso, George Altman, Kansas City Monarchs. And so it includes photos, biographical sketches about these players who were stars in the Negro Leagues but also crossed over and became stars in Major League Baseball, several of them household names now to any baseball fan. And so these are just some of the traveling exhibits that also exist under the umbrella of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. The Negro Leagues Baseball Museum really provides a service to anyone who has any inclination toward historical thinking. It's not simply a museum based on African American history or sports history. It shows how the Negro Leagues coincided with the rise and fall of segregation and then integration, but also helps teach larger concepts about the Civil Rights era or Jim Crow era or the Civil Rights Act, or of important historical figures during this time. African American involvement in baseball is a multi-layered story, and the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum helps tell that story. It covers women's history or gender history. It covers economic history. It covers global history. It covers transnational history, African American history, American history, history in general, and relationships, and the history of communities. And again, while the last Negro Leagues team folded in the early 1960s, their legacy lives on through surviving players, but also through the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and the work that Dr. Bob Kendrick, who is the president of this museum, is currently doing. It combines public history, local history, and historic preservation, because now the Paseo YMCA is turning into the Buck O'Neill Research Center. And so not only is there the Negro League Baseball Museum home base, there are the traveling exhibits, but now there will be the Buck O'Neill Research Center that will allow students to come in and study newspaper archives, other photos, various other exhibits and research information that will help them grow as historians, that will give them more interesting tidbits of information for just casual observers. But it is preserving the building where Andrew Rube Foster created, with 7 other owners, the Negro National League in 1920. It is preserving that building while promoting public history, local history, and keeping the spirit of the Negro Leagues alive.